Veronica slowly regained consciousness, her head spinning, and the humming noise around her gradually fading. She opened her eyes and saw a bright light blinding her. With difficulty trying to collect her thoughts, she realized that she was in a hospital room. Her heart began to beat faster as she remembered why she was there. She was expecting a child, and she couldn't wait to see her baby. Suddenly, a doctor entered the room with a serious expression. Veronica felt her heart stop in anticipation. "Veronica," he said, his voice cold and merciless, "I have something important to tell you." She looked at him, and despite her fear, there was hope in her eyes. "Where is my child?" she asked, her voice shaking with excitement. The doctor looked down, and this simple detail made Veronica feel that something was wrong. "Your baby died," he said, and the words tore her apart. "You will never have any more children." The world around her began to blur, and Veronica couldn't believe what she had just heard. Her heart broke, and she felt tears streaming down her cheeks. She couldn't speak. Her thoughts were in chaos. How was this possible? How could she lose her baby? I don't understand," she whispered, her voice low and weak. "Why? How did this happen?" The doctor sighed, his expression serious. "You had complications during your pregnancy. We did everything we could, but unfortunately it didn't help." Veronica felt anger boiling inside her, mixed with helplessness. She couldn't come to terms with this thought. Her dreams of motherhood, of holding her baby in her arms, were shattered. "I need time," she said, trying to collect her thoughts. The doctor nodded and left the room, leaving Veronica alone with her grief. She was in unbearable pain, and she didn't know how to live on. Tears were streaming down her face, and she couldn't stop them. She felt like the whole world was collapsing around her. A few days passed, and Veronica was still in the hospital. She couldn't believe that this had happened to her. She lay in bed all day, lost in thought and sadness. Her friend Anna came to visit her, trying to support her, but Veronica felt that no one could understand her grief. "Veronica," Anna said one day when they were sitting in the room, "maybe you should think about seeing a psychologist. It will help you understand your feelings." "I don't want to talk to anyone," Veronica answered, her voice becoming cold. "I just wish it didn't happen." Anna nodded, understanding that Veronica needed time now. But deep down, she knew that her friend couldn't cope with this grief alone. A few weeks later, Veronica returned home, but her life was no longer the same. Every corner of the apartment reminded her of what she had lost. She couldn't bring herself to put away the things that had been bought for the baby. The crib stood in the corner, a grim reminder of what could have been. More time passed, and Veronica tried to return to her normal life. She started working, but every minute she was tormented by thoughts of the lost child. One day, she found an online support group for parents who had lost children and decided to attend. It was a difficult decision, but she understood that she needed to talk to people who understood her grief. At the first meeting, she met several people who had also experienced similar tragedies. They shared their stories, and Veronica felt like she had finally found understanding. She began to open up about her feelings, and she felt a little of the weight begin to lift. But soon after, she learned a terrible secret that made her blood run cold. At one of their meetings, when they were discussing their experiences, one woman named Maria said something that made Veronica wary. "You know, I always thought that my loss was just fate, but now I'm sure it was something more," Maria said, her voice shaking. "What do you mean?" Veronica asked, her heart beating faster. "I found out that at the hospital where I gave birth, there were cases where doctors hid information about the health of newborns," she said, her eyes seeming full of fear. "They say that some children were given up for adoption without the consent of the mothers." Veronica felt the world around her blur. The words filled her with horror, but at the same time they ignited a spark of hope inside her. "How is this possible?" she asked, not believing her ears. "How could they do this?" "I don't know all the details," Maria answered, "but there are rumors. I heard that some women like us lost their children, but in reality they could have been taken away. I started investigating, and it was very difficult." Veronica realized that she needed to know the truth. This information had hit her hard, and although she knew it could be dangerous and painful, she couldn't just back down. She began researching, gathering information about the hospital where she gave birth, and soon came across several articles about unethical practices. Each new discovery made her afraid and angry. She learned that there had been several cases in the past year where mothers had complained of losing their children, but no one had investigated these claims. Veronica realized that her situation might not be the only one. After gathering all the facts, she decided to contact a lawyer to find out what really happened to her child. The meeting with the lawyer was tense, but Veronica felt that it was the right step. She couldn't let her grief go unpunished. "I want to understand what happened," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I can't come to terms with what happened. I need to know the truth." The lawyer nodded, understanding her feelings. "I'll try to help you," he said. "We can file a request for medical records and find out what happened in your situation." Veronica felt a glimmer of hope in her. She knew it would be a difficult road, but she was ready to fight for the truth. Every day spent waiting was a challenge, but she couldn't stop. Emotions overwhelmed her, and she understood that her life would never be the same, but she was determined. Time passed, and Veronica gained access to the medical records. Reading them, she felt her heart skip a beat. Some entries mentioned her condition, the difficulties during labor, but nothing about what happened to her child. This only increased her suspicions. She decided to contact Maria to share what she had learned. They met again at a support group, and Veronica shared her findings. "I think something is wrong," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I can't come to terms with what happened." Maria listened to her, and her eyes showed fear and understanding. "We need to find out the truth," she said decisively. "I am ready to help you." From that moment on, they began working together, collecting information and trying to find other women who could share their stories. Veronica felt hope growing in her heart. She knew it would be a difficult road, but she was ready to fight for the truth about her child. A few weeks later, as they began collecting evidence, Veronica felt her life begin to change. She was not only looking for the truth, but she was also beginning to rebuild herself. She realized that her grief could be a source of strength, and that she was not alone in this. Eventually, they decided to arrange a meeting with a lawyer to discuss the evidence they had collected. Veronica felt her heart pounding in her chest as they arrived at the office. This was a big deal, and she knew it all depended on how well they could present their case. "We can't let this go unnoticed," she said, looking at the lawyer. "I want them to be held accountable for their actions." The lawyer nodded, and Veronica knew they were on the right track. She felt a strength awakening inside her that she hadn't realized she had before. This was her fight, her truth, and she was ready to fight until the end. Every day brought new challenges, but Veronica knew she wasn't alone. She found support in her friends and in the group, and that helped her move forward. She knew her story could be an important part of a bigger picture, and that gave her strength. With every step she took, she became more confident that she could find answers to her questions. Veronica knew her child deserved justice, and she was ready to fight for it.